Hi, and welcome to Why Do Countries Exist, an episode on Malaysian political parties. So today's episode was requested by someone on my request form. If you want me to talk about another country's political parties, please comment it down below, send me an email, or put a request in the request form in the description. I currently have requests to do Italian parties, the Chinese United Front, Croatian parties, Belgian parties, Danish parties, Irish parties, New Zealand parties, Colombian parties, Brazilian parties, and maybe a South Africa update. Malaysia is right now in a complicated political situation. The country was dominated since independence by the National Front, or BN coalition. However, in the 2018 election, the opposition rallied around the Alliance of Hope, or PH coalition, and finally brought about change in government. However, the PH coalition came from widely different places ideologically, and were largely newcomers in running the country. In 2020, parts of the PH coalition broke with the government, and threw Malaysia into a political crisis. So now the breakoff coalition of PH, the National Alliance, or PN, is working with the former ruling BN coalition and a breakoff of BN, the Sarawak's Parties Alliance, or GPS. Malaysia also is importantly racially diverse. There are three main racial groups in the country. There are the majority Bumiputeras, then the Chinese and Indian races in the country. The Chinese and Indian groups are pretty self-explanatory, being made up of Chinese and Indian people that usually came to the country during British colonialism. The Bumiputeras is made up of several different groups, most notably the ethnic Malay, who form a majority of the country, and the Bumiputera. But there are also the Orang Asli, the indigenous people of Western Malaysia, and the various different indigenous people groups found in the eastern states of Sarawak and Sabah. These racial categories, especially that of the Bumiputera, and the affirmative action this group receives, is fairly controversial in the country, and is one of the political fault lines found in the country. Malaysia is a federation, being made up of 13 states and 3 federal territories. States have their own regional governments, while federal territories are placed directly under the control of the federal state. Most states and territories, along with most of the population, is based in peninsular Malaysia on the mainland, while the rest of Malaysia, located mostly on the island of Borneo, has a smaller population. Malaysia has 2 legislative bodies in parliament. The lower house is a Dewan Rakyat. The Dewan Rakyat is made up of 222 representatives elected from 222 electoral districts found throughout the country. Whatever candidate receives the most votes in a district becomes that district's representative. The districts are based around states and federal territories, but I'm not 100% sure what the rhyme or reason behind them is. So, for example, the most populous state, Selangor, has 22 districts, but Sarawak, which has less than half the population of Selangor, has 31 districts. The Dewan Rakyat elects the Prime Minister and their cabinet, and can write rules and regulations for the country. The second legislative body is the Dewan Negara. The Dewan Negara is made up of 70 senators, who are appointed into the office by several different ways. Every state's government selects 2 senators. The monarch of Malaysia, the Yang di Pertuan Agong, selects 4 to represent the federal territories, and the remaining 40 are appointed again by the Yang di Pertuan Agong. The Dewan Negara is the far weaker body. While it can vote on laws and regulations, it can only delay bills it disapproves of from the Dewan Rakyat, and can't change the Prime Minister, and is generally seen as a rubber stamp, agreeing with whatever the Dewan Rakyat does. Also, finally, Malaysia is another country that has a lot of parties present at the national level. Information can be kind of scarce for some of the smaller ones, so I won't talk about every party, but I'll talk about a decent chunk of them. So first off, we'll start talking about the PN coalition, and its largest party, the Parti Pribumi Bersatu Malaysia, or the Malay United Indigenous Party, or simply BERSATU. BERSATU was formed as a breakoff of the former ruling BN coalition, and then joined the opposition PH coalition, and then broke off from that to form the new PN coalition. Besides creating messy breakups with other political parties, the party believes in representing the Bumiputeras, who are the only group allowed to join the party. It is generally on the right, promoting nationalistic and conservative viewpoints. Its MPs seem to mostly be based on the eastern coast and Sabah. It currently has 32 representatives, 13 senators, and is a part of the ruling government in Kedah, Perak, Kelantan, Johor, and Sabah, and is a part of another 3 state legislatures. It is currently headed by Muhyiddin Yassin, a former prime minister, and is a representative and also a member of the Johor State Legislative Assembly. BERSATU promotes the idea of Ketuna Malayu, or Malay overlordship. This is the idea that Malay should receive special treatment and quotas for education, and Malay culture should be protected. The party backs conservative social positions, such as supporting the role of the monarchy in Malaysia, and even backing greater power for them, and flirting with Islamic policy positions. However, it does still back freedom of religion. It also was formed to oppose corruption in the previous ruling government. BERSATU, while right now plays a very vital role in Malaysian politics, is in a fairly precarious position. The fact that they are a party made from a breakoff, and are a part of the reason for the current political crisis, does make them appear untrustworthy for other parties. Other parties and voters may feel they are too opportunistic, and are willing to join or break any coalition simply if it will give them more power. The goal of driving towards more power did also result in infighting in the party, over the direction the party should go, and led to breakoffs of the party. The party's very Malay-centric platform has, unsurprisingly, led it to being disliked by Indian and Chinese voters, who feel it is promoting discriminatory policies, which leads to a racist Malay supremacist society. The other major party in the PN coalition is the Parti Islam Se Malaysia, or Malaysian Islamic Party, or PAS. PAS is an Islamist and conservative party. The party is one of the oldest in Malaysia and has undergone several shifts over the course of its history. Today, the party represents devout Muslims who tend to be almost entirely Malay and are often supported and backed by Islamic clerics. It finds a lot of support in the northwestern coast of peninsular Malaysia and is where most of its MPs come from. It currently has 18 representatives, 8 senators, and is a part of the government, or supports the government, in 9 states, and is present in the Selangor legislature. It is currently headed by Abdul Hadi Awang, a representative from Terengganu and special envoy of Malaysia to the Middle East. PAS, while it doesn't call for the entire country to convert to Islam, do believe that Islam needs to have more power in the country. It believes in setting up Islamic religious courts that will apply to all Muslims in the country. In states it controls, it tends to push for more conservative dress codes that fall under Islamic law. It also is pro-Palestinian, supports greater civil liberties, and wants to do more to prevent Muslims from converting out of the religion. PAS is often disliked by secular voters for pushing for a more Islamic state, feeling they are infringing on them. Its role as a party for Malaysia's Muslims has also put the party in a tough spot, as more moderate Muslims can feel the party is too forceful in promoting a dogmatic version of Islam, and the party is just a bunch of radicals. Meanwhile, more fundamentalist Muslims may see the party as too soft, and reject operating in a secular state at all. Finally, the party has been accused of being sympathetic to radical Islamist groups around the world, such as the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, and the Taliban. We move on to the BN coalition, and go to the Pertubuhan Kebasan Melayu Bersatu, or the United Malays National Organization, or UMNO. UMNO is a conservative and Islamic democratic party, and had previously run the country continuously from 1955, when it was a British colony, up until 2018. While it doesn't hold a majority in Parliament, it is easily the most powerful in Parliament and in the country as a whole, due to the party's strong organizational structure, large number of political elites found in the party, and experience at governing. Its support base is often more rural, and tends to be either poorer, or come from political elites. It, while not exclusive to the Bumiputeras, is supported almost exclusively by them. Most of its MPs are based in peninsular Malaysia, particularly in larger rural states. It has 38 representatives, 13 senators, and is a part of the government or supports the government in 7 states, and is present in every state legislature except Sarawak. It is currently headed by Ahmed Zamid Hamidi, a representative from Perak, and former Deputy Prime Minister. The current Prime Minister, Ismail Sabri Yaakob, is also a member of the party, and while the Yang di Pertuan Agong is officially non-partisan, it seems the royal court generally backs the UMNO. The UMNO backs right-wing economics and Ketuan Melayu. It supports a multi-ethnic and multi-religious Malaysia, but also believes that Islam and the Bumiputeras should be put first, with the latter given economic and educational protections, and wants Malay to be the lingua franca of the country. The party generally has backed policies it believes will attract foreign investors and help raise the income of Malaysians, so generally it tries to take a pro-business approach to economics. The party also wants to do more to combat climate change. UMNO, being the ruling party for most of the country's history, has earned it a lot of experience. However, it also means anything bad they did can be thrown back at them. Since independence, the country has been accused of democratic backsliding, as the party does everything possible to ensure that they remain in power, altering district borders to make it easier for their candidates to get elected, cozying up and getting special favors from the royal family, controlling news stations to broadcast UMNO talking points, and even being accused of outright rigging elections to get their way. The party's very pro-Malay stance means that it often calls chauvinistic and discriminatory. It also has been accused of corruption and stealing public funds to live out a wealthy lifestyle. When the party was finally defeated in the general election in 2018, it was largely due to a combination of its controversial past, corrupt politicians, and Malay-centric behavior that led many people to vote against them. The next party in BN is finally a party that bases its support outside of the Bumiputeras. Malaysia Huaran Gohoy, or Malaysian Chinese Association, or MCA, is a party that represents Chinese people in the country and represents the Chinese faction of the BN coalition and traditional political elite. It is generally conservative and pro-status quo. It currently only has MPs from Johor. It has 2 representatives, 4 senators, and is a part of the government in Perlis, Pahang, and Malacca. It is currently headed by Wee Ka Seyong, a representative and current Minister of Transport. MCA wants to protect Chinese Malaysians and promote a multiracial society. It wants to protect the right of private schools to teach in the Chinese language, wants to raise the living standard of the country, and favors strengthening parliamentary democracy in the country. The MCA, while it formally dominated the Chinese vote in the country, it has since 2008 been a largely weak and ineffective party. It is considered less of an actual partner to the UMNO, and more as a surrogate and puppet party for them, that spinelessly backs whatever the UMNO wants. Chinese voters feel that the MCA hasn't stood up for them enough, and instead have turned to other parties they feel have more of a desire to listen to them. This hasn't been helped by infighting within the party, as various different factions have sought to gain power, leading to a very weak party. The next party, which is also the last BN party we will talk about, is in a very similar predicament. The Malaysia Intria Kongres, or Malaysian Indian Congress, or MIC, is a party representing the Indians in the BN coalition. Like MCA, MIC is a conservative and pro-status quo party. And also, while formerly the party that received the most support from the Indian community, has since 2008 declined. Its name is also a reference to the Indian National Conference, one of the major parties of India. It has 1 representative from Perak, 3 senators, and is a part of the government in Negeri Sembilan, Malacca, and Johor. It is currently headed by Vigneeshwaran Sanasi, a former senator and current special envoy to South Asia. MIC backs a lot of the same stuff the MCA backs. It wants to protect Indian Malaysians, favors a multiracial society, wants to invest more in education to ensure Indian Malaysians can get a good education, and favors defending Malaysia's parliamentary democracy. We go to the GPS coalition, and there's only one party I'll talk about here. Parti Pisaka Bumiputera BERSATU, or United Bumiputera Heritage Party, or BPP, is like the rest of the parties in the GPS, a Sarawak-based party. It seems to be considered conservative and nationalistic, wanting to represent the Bumiputeras of Sarawak. It has almost always been the dominant party in the state, and serving until 2018 as an ally of the BN coalition. However, even though it is a breakoff of BN, it seems some people consider it still de facto subservient to it. It currently has 13 representatives, 3 senators, and is the dominant party in Sarawak. It is currently headed by Abang Abdul Rahman Johar Abang Openg, the current Chief Minister of Sarawak, who was also a member of the State Legislative Assembly and the State Ministers for Finance, Natural Resources, and Energy. PBB, like other Bumiputera-based parties, favor greater benefits to Bumiputeras and affirmative action that benefits them. The party, however, does believe that both English and Chinese schools should be promoted and encourages the usage of both languages. Due to the fact that Sarawak isn't majority Muslim, PBB opposes the implementation of Islamic laws, even for solely Muslims in the state. It also favors greater autonomy for Sarawak, wants to move towards a more digitalized economy, and favors an expansion of the oil industry in the state. The last pro-government party we will go over is the party BERSATU Sabah, or the United Sabah Party, or PBS. PBS is a Sabah-based party, and unlike most other parties we have talked about, has a support base reaching across multiple communities. However, the Kazadan Dusun people are the most loyal to the party. It has served both as an opposition party and also as an ally to the government. It currently has one representative, and is a part of the government in Sabah. It is currently headed by Maximus Ongkili, the party's sole representative, and is the former Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. PBS backs greater autonomy for Sabah. It wants less government interference in the state, supports a secular state, strongly opposes illegal immigration coming into the state, and wants to further the development of Sabah. It also favors continued affirmative action for the Bumiputeras. So we will now go to the opposition parties, and we'll start by looking at the PH coalition. The largest party within this coalition is the Parti Tindakan Demokrata, or Democratic Action Party, or DAP. DAP is a social democratic and progressive party. It both today and historically was considered one of the leading anti-UMNO parties, representing those who felt that the UMNO's conservatism was too repressive. It's generally supported by the growing middle class in the country, tends to do well in urban areas, along the western coast, and among younger voters, Chinese voters, and to a lesser extent Indian voters. Most of its MPs are found in the western part of peninsular Malaysia and Sarawak. It currently has 42 representatives, 2 senators, and is a part of the government in Pening, Perak, Selangor, Negri Sembilan, and Johor, and is present in another 6 state legislatures. It is currently headed by Lim Guan Eng, a representative from Penang, and former Minister of Finance. DAP's main goal is fighting for a secular, multiracial Malaysia. It opposes Islam being the official religion, opposes special treatment of the Bumiputeras, and while it does believe Malay should be the official language, it also believes Chinese, Tamil, and English should be respected more, and schools should be allowed to teach in those languages. It backs greater integration with other countries in Southeast Asia, and wants to promote democracy and human rights abroad. It also is supportive of trade unions, wants more autonomy to local areas, and Sabah and Sarawak, wants to do more to empower women, opposes corruption, and backs a social market economy. DAP, while it is fairly old, has had limited experience at governing. Yes, they may have governed at the state level, but at national politics they were only in charge for 2 years. It seems a lot of people feel they don't really have the ability to actually change the country or challenge political elites. They also struggle to connect with the majority Malay population and are accused of being a party solely for urban Chinese voters. This is partially why you can find in comment sections of things talking about the DAP, people accusing them of being racist and hating Islam. There are also accusations that the party is funded and or supported by the Chinese Communist Party or the People's Action Party of Singapore. The next party is pretty similar to the DAP. Parti Keadilan Rakyat, or People's Justice Party, or PKR, is a social liberal party, and also a part of the PH coalition. It similarly gets a lot of support among young urban voters in the Western Peninsula, and is where most of its MPs are found. However, it was formed as a breakoff of the UMNO, and does get some support among the Malay middle class. It currently has 36 representatives, 2 senators, is a part of the government in the same places DAP is a part of the government, and is present in another 4 state legislatures. It is currently headed by Anwar Ibrahim, a representative from Negri Sembilan, and was the former Deputy Prime Minister when he was a part of UMNO. PKR's main goal is fighting for a secular, multiracial Malaysia, so pretty much everything I said for DAP's policies could apply here. However, it focuses less on fighting for equality under the law and tends to push for what it calls a humane economy, with strong welfare benefits for the poor. It also has a greater focus on fighting corruption, favors a two-state solution in the Israel-Palestine conflict, and favors greater cooperation between parties in the country. PKR again is similar to DAP, in that it suffers from a lot of the same criticism it does, that it is inexperienced, it is a party for mostly urban voters, and often receives negative press from the UMNO media. However, PKR is unique in the fact that it seems to experience a lot more infighting than DAP. It has lost 14 representatives due to defections during the political crisis, and the party infamously tried to remove its leader in Negeri Sebelum to get Ibrahim into power in the state. While Ibrahim is a very recognized politician in Malaysian politics, he is sometimes considered as the only thing notable or uniting PKR. The party is seen sometimes as just his party with no deeper connections between it. So when he inevitably leaves Malaysian politics, the future of the party might be put into question. The last party of the PH coalition we will talk about is Parti Amanah Negara, or National Trust Party. AMANAH was formed as a merger of an old, essentially dead party and a breakoff from PAS, with it combining Islamic democratic ideals with progressivism. It generally has a similar support base to other PH parties, although with a greater appeal to Muslim Malays, who may not feel comfortable with a very strict conservative view of Islam, although they have stated they support an Islamic agenda. It gets most support in Selangor, where most of its MPs come from. It currently has 11 representatives, is a part of the government in, again, the same 5 states PKR and DAP are governing, and is also present in Malacca and Kedah. It is currently headed by Muhammad Sabu, a representative from Selangor and former Minister of Defense. The remaining parties are all opposition parties that generally, right now, have fairly good relationships to PH. First, we will look at Parti WARISAN, or the Heritage Party. WARISAN is a Sabah and Labuan-based party, although they recently stated they're going to try and operate throughout the country. It was originally formed as a combination of several different politicians in Sabah who united together to oppose the BN coalition. It describes itself as a moderate but progressive party and seeks to appeal to all Malaysians. Its decision to operate throughout the country is apparently relatively controversial, since the PH coalition believes it will lead to less opposition lawmakers getting elected. It currently has 7 representatives and is the largest opposition party in Sabah. It is currently headed by Shafi Abdal, a representative and member of the Sabah Legislative Assembly. Next we go to the Parti PEJUANG Tanah A, or Homeland Fighters Party. PEJUANG is a breakoff of BERSATU, so a breakoff of a breakoff. It was formed to oppose the PN government that was being formed in 2020. It promotes similar stuff to BERSATU, except a bit more moderate. The founder and leader of the party, who was also the founder of BERSATU, Mahathir Mohamad, served as Prime Minister twice, and promoted generally Bumiputera nationalist policies, and has since joining the opposition in 2015 been very opposed to corruption. PEJUANG is currently mostly based in Mohamad's home state of Kedah. It currently has 4 representatives, supports the government in Selangor, and is part of the opposition in Kedah. Mohamad, besides being a former PN, is also a representative. The next party is also a breakoff party, but less so. The Parti Sarawak BERSATU, or United Sarawak Party, or PSB, is based in, you guessed it, Sarawak. It was originally a part of the BN coalition, however after the 2018 election it joined the GPS, until in 2019 it allied itself with the PH coalition. It is centrist and a multi-ethnic party, but for the most part it's a party for the Chinese community in the state. It apparently is supported by the lumber business in the state also. It currently has 2 representatives, and is the main opposition in Sarawak. It is currently headed by Wong Su Ko, a member of the Sarawak Legislative Assembly, and is the current leader of the opposition in the state. The last party we will talk about today is the Ikatan Demokrat Malaysia, or the Malaysian United Democratic Alliance, or MUDA. MUDA is formed from former BERSATU member Syed Sadiq Syed Abdul Rahman and was formed to oppose the PN government. It seeks to appeal to the youth vote in the country. It promotes more environmental regulations, promotes greater representation for women and the disabled, and is opposed to corruption. Rahman is the party's only representative and elected official. I must confess, the main reason why I wanted to talk about MUDA was its theme song. Now, most parties in Malaysia have some sort of anthem, and they generally fit the style of political anthem that was written 50 years ago. However, MUDA's anthem, in keeping with its theme of being hip and trendy, is more of a pop song and has rap verses in it. I'll confess, I find it very humorous, and honestly, the chorus isn't too bad. It's just very strange when compared to the anthems of other parties. So those are all the parties of Malaysia I will talk about today. There's a couple more represented at the federal and state level, but I'd say I covered all the big ones. As a summary, the BN coalition, which is made up of UMNO, a Malay conservative party, along with the much smaller MCA and MIC, has dominated the country. It is allied to several other parties who usually come from the Malay ethnic group, like BERSATU or PBB. The opposition is made up of the PH coalition and its allies, and generally are progressive and come from the Chinese ethnic group or urban voters. Just in case you want to learn more, I do have a couple of different sources that I'm just going to recommend real quick. So there's an article from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, Malaysia's Political Polarization, Race, Religion, and Reform, written by Bridget Walsh. And then from Eurasia Review, Malaysia, Can BERSATU Survive the Next General Election Analysis, written by Maria Hunter. And then there's a YouTube video, BEME News, Malaysia Politics Are Stranger Than Fiction. Those were just some sources that I thought were really interesting, so if you want to learn more about Malaysian politics, I would say look at those. They seemed relatively trustworthy to me. I'm an outsider to Malaysian politics, so maybe they're horribly biased and I'm just spreading false information. But yeah, hope everyone enjoyed. Next time, we'll talk about a country really, really close, Brunei. Also, an interesting contrast between Malaysia and Brunei. There are no political parties in Brunei that are legal, so interesting contrast. And then we'll talk about political parties in Italy, and then we'll talk about the Chinese United Front. But yeah, thanks for listening, thanks for watching. If you want, you can email me at whydocountriesexist@gmail.com for your thoughts, comments, suggestions, or hate mail. Take care, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.